And I felt like a cloud, like I'm just floating in the air. And I was looking down at them and I was like, wow, like that's my body. Like, why am I didn't understand yet. I was like, why am I not in my body? I don't get what's going on. There is so much more that meets the eye.
Kia ora, hello, and welcome back. Another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast, where we talk all things life, death, and experiences in between. Today, I'm chatting with Neda Harb, who is all about near-death experiences. She's all about energy and mastery. She's had multiple experiences herself, and she's here today to share a little bit about how that completely transformed her life from that young age, how everything going forward was different. Today, she helps near-death experience survivors find empowerment, understanding in the unique challenges, and she offers spiritual guidance post-experience. So this is something very, very important because often after a near-death experience, it can be very hard to come back into this world that we're in and to reintegrate into these physical experiences that we're having. It's all amazing. It's great work. So Neda, thank you for joining me for this conversation. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's really nice being here. So thank you for having me.
Are you happy to share a bit about your experiences and when did your first experience happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel it's very important for people that have had near-death experiences to know that they're not alone. When I was 14 years old, I used to live in Dubai. So we lived in the desert. And there's a lot of like sand duning activities in Dubai. And we were like in a sand dune like race. I was 14, so obviously I wasn't driving, but I was sitting in a Wrangler, which had an open roof in the back seat. And at one point, the car went off the sand dune. And before I knew it, I was just floating in the air. Now, in that moment, I didn't really know what was going on. My brain started functioning very slowly, but I felt so much like inner peace and inner bliss. And I felt like a cloud, like I'm just floating in the air. And then it took me a couple of minutes, but then started to understand what was going on because I looked down and there were so many cars with their lights on towards my body, which was there. I had hit a rock. My head had hit a rock. So I was bleeding all over
Oh
and
God.
everyone was crying and everyone was screaming and they were calling the ambulance. And I was looking down at them and I was like, wow, like that's my body. Like, why am I didn't understand yet. I was like, why am I
Yeah.
not in my body? I don't get what's going on. So instead of focusing on what they were doing, I decided to focus on what I was experiencing. And I looked around and I saw so many beautiful things about life, about God, about our soul's journey, and how really we don't really know anything if we're not seeing it from this perspective. Because a lot of people live in fear, they live in worry, they live in anxiety, and I used to as well. But when I was up there and I realized, hold on a minute, there is so much more that meets the eye. I just bathed in that unconditional. Like love is such a small word
Mm.
to define what I was feeling. This unconditional, everything is magical, beautiful realm. Few minutes later, I saw the ambulance come and then they took my body. And I remember my aunt jumped into the back of the ambulance with my body. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go back. I need to be there with them. And then I instantly woke up in my body. Obviously, my head was still bleeding. They were stitching me up in the ambulance. And because I was 14, like remember back then, there was no
Yeah.
Google, there was no Yahoo, none
Uh-huh.
of like, there was no Chat GPT.
Yep.
So I couldn't really search what I experienced and I had to rely on books. And whenever I would talk to doctors and be like, listen, there is more to life, you know? They would all say something similar, like, oh, you just hit your head. You just hit your head. I'm like, yes, I did hit my head, but what I felt was so real.
Yeah.
So that was like the catalyst to me wanting to discover where I went, what I saw, what I experienced. And that's actually what led me to my spiritual path, to my healing journey, and to today having like a whole Ascension Academy, helping people master every facet of spirituality.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. They are such life defining moments, aren't they? They change everything because we tap into something that we're just not in normally here in this reality. I'm curious to know when you were there and you watched your body go into the ambulance, do you feel like you had the choice to come back when you're like, I've got to go be with them? Was that almost like a choice to come back? Did you feel like you could have stayed? Did you want to stay? Or how much control did you have in this situation?
Yeah, I love that question. When I look back at it, I feel like as if it happened yesterday. And when I was up there and I saw them take my body, it's like every cell of my energetic body knew it was time to go back.
Right.
I personally, where I sit today, I don't believe there's anything outside divine will. Like everything is happening in divine design of God's creation. So, did I have a choice? Maybe in my mind, I would think, oh, yeah, maybe I had the choice to stay or go back. But I also know that I'm not in charge. God is
Yeah.
designed life. And if God intended me to come back, that's why I had that thought. I need to go back now.
Yeah. Yeah. We can often think we're in control, but actually we're just going to make the decisions that we needed to make anyway. So
Absolutely.
do you feel like everything is divinely appointed, divinely chosen, or do we have some element of free will? Like, can we make choices?
Yeah, like I'll tell you what I saw. Yeah. And that's the theory I live my life with. When I was up there, I realized that life is not linear. So life doesn't happen Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It
Mm.
doesn't happen in linear space. Life is happening all the time in a multi-dimensional manner. So even though Neda or Christy are experiencing this body right now, we're also experiencing other lives at the same time. So, people call them past lives, but they're actually parallel lives. Like we're experiencing, lives in different countries, even lives in different planets, lives in different timelines. They could be past, present, and future. And it's all happening now. And our soul evolution is actually the evolution of the entire picture. So it's not the soul evolution of one individual, because whatever we experience in one aspect of our soul's experience. So, like my Neda's experience or you, Christy's experience, that's going to ripple effect on all the other soul experiences that we're having right now. And all the other soul experiences that are happening right now are rippling effect into this one. So the first thing is like our soul is multidimensional. It's happening in many different bodies. And some of them can even be right here on earth. We can meet somebody and be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you're my soulmate, but they're actually just different versions of us in
Uh-huh.
different bodies, right? Now, so that's our soul journey. Our soul journey is kind of like, this might sound crazy, but it does exist, but at the same time it doesn't exist, because nothing is really real unless nothing is really real. Everything is just God's kind of like imagination. It's kind of like we're in God's dream. Like, when you're dreaming, everything feels so real in the dream. But then you wake up and you're like, oh my God, that was a dream. And
Mm.
then it's not real. So when we're living, we're experiencing all our experiences, the good, bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and everything can get so intense with joy or with sorrow. But then when we die, we realize, hold on a minute, none of it was real. It was just a figment of God's dream. And that's really how I live my life today. Everything is part of God's dream, but God is a conscious dreamer. Like, do you
Mhm.
know, like, I'm sure you've had those experiences where you're dreaming in the dream.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, so kind of like that. So God is kind of like experiencing all of this, all our lives through his dream, but he's also awake in the dream, right? So he's aware, like as individuals, he's awake in the dream. So when we have our awakening, we're kind of like aligning our individual perspective to the higher picture of God's dream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, this all makes sense. And it's something that I've had a lot of people discuss with me, exactly what you've just said. It is a lot for the little brain to get it all and to actually be able to understand. And I think quite often we can't understand some of these concepts. But absolutely, I've heard people talking about how we're living the past, present, and future all at the same time, how it's not linear. There's so many thoughts I have around this because part of me is wondering, like basic questions like what happens when someone dies? Does that energy then go into one of the other lifetimes? And also, how come I keep waking up in the same, well, not waking up, how come I don't feel so aware of these other lives that I could be living at the same time? I'm always back in this life.
Yeah, like your consciousness. Yeah, it's such a legit question. Like your consciousness, imagine your consciousness is like a big cloud. And within this cloud, there are different humans, right? So you're experiencing Christie's individual experience of your overall consciousness, right? Now, the more a person meditates, the more a person detoxifies their pineal gland, the more a person starts aligning their life to, let's say, the healthiest, most loving version of themselves, they will naturally start to tap into their intuition. They will naturally start, because we're all intuitive, they'll
Mm,
naturally start to tap into like that super abilities that they have, where they would meet someone and be like, oh, I know this person from a past life.
mm.
Or they would have a dream and they would know, oh my God, this is not a dream. This is actually a message from one of my angels. So it's very important if we want to live multidimensionally, and I think we should, because that's really cool. You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's really about harnessing that ability. You know, like our intuition is like a muscle, and if we don't go to the gym, we're never going to have abs as much as we want them, right? But when we exercise, the abs are going to show up. So when we fine tune and exercise our intuition muscle, and be dedicated to that, then it's very easy to become aware of all your past lives. Christie's version, like Neda's version, we're not going to go and experience that life because we're experiencing this life, even though all those lives are connected. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But again, hard for the brain to get my head around it. But yes, it does make sense. So my original question was, what happens when one of our lifetimes when we die? Because like none of us are getting out of here alive. We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
What happens? Like, is that level of energy, that consciousness, whatever we want to call it, does that go into some of the other lives? And then do I wake up and I'm no longer experiencing this life, but experiencing one of those other lives?
So, like, imagine life is like a school, right? So, when you finish grade 4, you're going to go to grade 5. And then when you finish grade 5, eventually you move on to grade 6 and then so forth, right? So, when a person dies in this life, right, they're not going to go experience a past life that's already being lived by a part of their consciousness, but they will go into a different grade of, so a different level of consciousness for them to embody in their linear life. So for example, if somebody dies, they're just going to be reborn. And so there is no such thing as death. Death
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
actually
agree
a
with that.
rebirth. Yeah. So when a person's reborn, they can either be reborn as a human. If they're like in grade 2, they need to finish the human lives. Or if they're like, doing their PhD on Earth, when they die, they'll probably move into an angelic realm, a higher dimensional realm, and then they'll start school there.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. A lot of my listeners, you'll know this. When I come back next time, I want to come back as a cat. Is that like a rest life? I ask a lot of guests this question because I really like this idea. Um, Animals, is that people have different experiences or different ideas around being animals, that animals don't have the full consciousness or soul, or they just exist for whatever reason. I've got a theory that it's a rest life, that if you've had a really full on time, or you've, like you said, you've just done your PhD level, could you come back to just have a really nice life where you get fed and you roll over and you lie in the sun and you sleep all day?
You absolutely can. You can come back as whatever you choose on a soul level. A lot of people choose lives based on what they're going to learn, what they're going to experience, but most importantly, what service they're going to bring to their communities. Like if you look at our earth, the most enlightened thing on the planet is a tree, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah,
Like
no, this is interesting. Yeah.
yeah, like the most enlightened thing on the planet is a tree. Like a tree does not have a similar level of consciousness like humans do, but a tree is more enlightened than a human because a tree is living in the now moment, which is, first of all, the most important thing because it realizes there is no time. And the second thing is a tree, from the moment it's born, the moment it sprouts, till the moment it's gone, it's just of service.
Yeah.
We are here to be of service, you know? And when we apply those things in our life, so we dedicate ourselves to really open up and live in our fullest. It's like this is the image that I'm getting. When you have a little aquarium and there are fish in it, right? And then imagine this aquarium has sanded glass, that glass they use in spas
Yeah.
to nobody see
Yeah.
what's going on. Okay, so these fish, now take that aquarium and put it in the ocean. The fish inside the aquarium, they can't see the ocean because they have the sanded glass. But the entire ocean can see, oh my God, there's a little aquarium there with fish in it,
Mm.
because they're not inside the sanded glass. So when we open up our intuition, the sanded glass starts to become regular glass. You can literally see everything that's available in the both physical and the energetic world. And there's a lot happening in the energetic world, a lot,
Uh-huh.
like both the dark side and the light side. And so when a person's living that way and like really dedicating their lives, like for example, your podcast is a podcast of service. You're literally offering a very divine service for people to listen, get empowered, and learn what to do, how to do, and move forward. So trees, that's all they do. They are of service. They will give you their branches, they will give you their wood, they will give you oxygen, they give you their fruits from the moment they sprout all the way till the end of their life. So I feel like when we die or when we are reborn, we're going to be choosing lives that are for the highest evolution of what service we can offer.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's really cool because I think within all of us, there's an element of how can I help? How can I make the world better? We might squish that down. We might not pursue that or follow that. But I think there's something in all of us that is there that we want to be good, decent people. We want to help. We want to make the world better. So I really
Yeah,
like that. Now,
absolutely.
I know you said that you've had a couple of different experiences. Were your
Yeah.
other experiences after this one, or was this the main one but not the first one? How did that work?
Yeah, I want to touch on what you said earlier because you're right. Like a lot of people in our innate nature, everybody wants to help. Everybody
Yeah, I
wants.
believe so.
Yeah. And a lot of people are afraid, like, oh, what if I start my podcast and it doesn't work? Or what if I publish my book and then nobody buys it? And what if I do this? Like, I just want to share with everyone listening, like when you are aligning yourself to your divine service, you don't have to think of the how, what, where, when. Obviously, you have to do the physical work, but there's a bigger divine power in charge, which is God. And that force is going to help you into accomplishing what you need to accomplish. Like you have incarnated to be of service. So when your angels and your spirit guides and God or your higher self sees that, oh my God, she is actually or he is actually aligning to their divine path, you're gonna have a much bigger support than a media agency or anybody, because you have the whole angelic world supporting you to accomplish and fulfill your mission. It's very important
Mm,
because everybody has a unique gift to offer. This is so sweet because God only creates geniuses. God doesn't create dumb people. God, yeah, like God doesn't create somebody that has nothing to offer. Everybody has a beautiful gift to offer. And our gifts are usually our experiences, right? Like everybody goes through something and then they wake up from it and then they help others. So for people to trust that, that's very important. After I died the first time, I've had a few more deaths. They weren't as extreme, they weren't as dramatic. I had one when I was crossing the road and a whole like garbage truck or a truck that big was passing by, and like I almost died but I didn't. Like it was about to hit me but something pulled me back, and when I turned
okay.
around, I saw an angel. There was no human holding me back. So it was like stuff like that. It wasn't like I actually physically died. Like I almost died. And that was the first time I met Archangel Gabriel, because Archangel Gabriel like literally held me and pulled me back. And I turned around and he's like, like, I wanted you to stop. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, tell me more about you. And, he took me on a whole journey and taught me so much. I've had a lot of plant medicine experiences, like ayahuasca. If you've heard of ayahuasca,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
died on ayahuasca, and I've come back. And what's beautiful about when I died on ayahuasca is I was afraid to die, even though I had died when I was 14 and I experienced that there is no such thing called death. there's only rebirth. When I was under the medicine, she told me, like, listen, it's time to kill you now. I got scared. I was like, no, 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 I'm not ready to die. She's like, no, you're gonna have to die now. So after, a couple of arguments that I had with the plant medicine, because I didn't want to die,
Yeah.
I surrendered. I'm like, let's go. Let's freaking do this. Fuck it. I'm done arguing with you. Let's die. And when I died, I went to the same place that I went to when I died when I was 14. So it was a beautiful remembrance, because when I did my ayahuasca, I was like 25. So 10 years had
Mm-hmm.
passed. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of forget, when you have, like, when you fall in love the first time, 10 years in the marriage, you kind of forget that first spark. So
Mm-hmm.
when I died again in ayahuasca, I remembered, like, oh my God, there is nothing on earth but love. There is nothing in the universe but love. There's no such thing as sickness. There's no such thing as poverty. There's no such thing as bad luck. Everything is just love. When people experience these uncomfortable situations like sickness, poverty,
Mm-hmm.
pain, lack, whatever it is, troubling thoughts, negative thoughts, it's just trauma that's stored in the body that needs to be released. Either the trauma is ancestral, so it's passing down from our ancestors all the way up to us, or it's leaking in from those other lives that our soul is experiencing for us to process it in this life.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting that things can transfer through.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, I've never ever thought about that. That is fascinating. I'm gonna have to let that percolate for a bit. Um, yeah, and often people talk about how the uncomfortable experiences, whether it's, yeah, you've named a whole lot of them, illness, for example, I'm going to take that one. That is a learning experience. That's about having the physical experience to learn to be able to progress. Just like you talked about the school, maybe that's an exam paper or just some little test that we have to be able to progress and move forward in this lifetime in the spiritual way that we need to be.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, there's so
And a
many
lot of
elements.
illnesses, like, I have to say, because I've had like thousands and thousands of clients so far, like a lot of illnesses, a lot of them, they are coming from past life or parallel lives, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because think of it, like our soul, like, imagine you have, like, a whole tumbler of water, right? If you're gonna put blue ink in the water, the whole thing's gonna turn
Yeah.
blue. So if there's like 25 past lives where people have diabetes, it's probably gonna leak into this life. Yes, it's a learning. Absolutely, it's a learning, but it's also something we can resolve when we live in that awareness that, hold on a minute, this is not just a punish, or this isn't a punishment. This is something
Mm,
I can solve if I find out why my past version or my parallel version chose to experience that.
mm, Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the water example really makes sense. You put the dye in, and yeah. I've just got to mention this one. It's a little bit of a sidetrack. We're talking about parallel lives, past lives, I think possibly even future lives. It's all happening all at once. I love it when we hear stories of people and they do a regression or something, or they get some insight into how they died, and maybe they got, I'm just going to say, stabbed somewhere, and then in this current lifetime, they have a scar where that would have happened.
Absolutely.
If or they're born with a birthmark where that injury would have happened in a past life. If
Yeah.
we are living all the lives all at once, how can we be born with the birthmark in this current one that we're aware of if that life is still being lived, and maybe, or has the death already taken place in that life? Am I even making sense?
You're absolutely making sense. You see, the thing is, like, it's not something linear, right? And you're
Yeah.
totally making sense. You see, when we're living these lives, right, even though linearly we have not yet been born in this life, the experience has already happened to our soul. Our soul is not just in one body, it's in all these bodies. So if somebody has a scar in one soul, it will show up. It might not, but it will show up in other versions of them, so other bodies of them. So that's why people get birthmarks. Some people even, like, they'll have, like, I'll give you, for example, an example of a specific client of mine, the massive, massive leg pain, and this person, like, could barely walk, right? He had to use
Mm,
like a walking stick. And, when I was doing the session, I was like, oh, this is from a past life. So when I went, the thing is, you need to find the seed of that past life because there's many past lives. There's like millions.
Mm.
So when I found the seed of that past life and we healed that version of him, I literally saw, because my intuition's super open, I literally saw that all the other lives that are connected to his leg issue got resolved. And 20 minutes later, the guy let go of the cane and started walking. So we can
Oh,
change
cool.
things easy. Yeah, we can change things easily when we tap into these lives and shift them and heal them.
So how do we find the seed, the instigator of all of this? For him, it was the pain in the leg. How do we find that and how do we clear that?
Like what I would say is, let's say somebody has a disharmony, okay? Like we're not gonna call it it's a disharmony. So it could be emotional, like depression, anxiety.
Mm.
It could be mental, like paranoia or something like that, overthinking, negative thinking. It could be physical, so it's like an actual illness or a broken leg or whatever it may be, right? You can do this in more than one way. The easiest way to go about it is two methods that I personally use. The first method is either using the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is literally connected to the bigger soul. So it can detect any life you want to heal. The second way, which is the faster way, which I tend to use more of, is just going into the quantum field. Because when you're working with energy, everything is connected. So you can
Mm.
literally go into the quantum field and detect what life is creating this disharmony and then solve that so this life gets solved. And this doesn't even have to be a disharmony in the body. Even like people that have external issues, like maybe marriage issues or money problems or whatever it may be, like something
Mm.
that's happening in our life. And also know that parallel lives, it doesn't also have to be specifically just you. It could be your ancestors, and that plays a huge role as well, because our DNA is like a book. So when people look at the cover of the book, they don't really have all the information of the book. But when you start reading all the chapters, you're like, oh, this is a lot of knowledge. This is a lot of wisdom.
Mm.
So our
Mm.
DNA is like that. We know we have a DNA. But when we go into our DNA, we get to understand the programming that we get. So the actual chapters that we get from our ancestors. And we get a lot. We've had a lot of ancestors, and whatever gifts they had, that's going to be active in our DNA, and whatever issues they had, that's also going to be active in our DNA, unless we bring them into harmony.
Mm. Gosh, it's complex, isn't it?
It
I'm,
is complex.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking how everything affects everything right across all the unlimited. We have no idea how many lifetimes. It's just, there's so much in it. There's
and
so
and
much we don't know.
like if you look at like a neuro brain surgeon, right? When we watch this person performing surgery, we're going to think it's so complicated. But the person that's doing it, he has so much experience. It's like it's easy. He can do it while he's
Yeah.
listening to his favorite song, right?
Yeah,
So that's why
yeah.
I say like, and it's true, like everything we do affects our soul evolution, and it's very important. But the more we get into it, it just becomes our natural state. It's not challenging, it's not difficult. Like imagine life is like a game of snake and ladders, right? Like in
Mm.
snake and ladders, you can roll the dice and then you can get to a ladder and you can evolve very quickly, right? Move up many steps. Or you can roll a dice and you get to a snake and you end up where you were. I like to use that analogy for the choices that we make, because everything we do either moves us up the ladder or takes us back in our evolution. So yeah,
Mm.
like everything actually matters, and that's why I feel like the name of the game, because life is a game, it's not
Mm.
real, even though it feels very real. But the name of the game is alignment. Like how aligned are we with our choices, with how we feel and what we desire?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, this comes up a lot, and I really feel this. And like we've said, we've all got good in us. We've all got things. I personally believe that we have things we need to do, that we come here with some level of purpose.
Absolutely.
And just tuning in, talking to our spiritual team. And that can be, if we don't even know who they are, it's literally just acknowledging we have a team and there's more to this physical world. Just looking for hints or emotions or feelings, or even like, what are we interested in? What makes us happy? How do we spend our time when we're happy? Things like that can be all connected to our purpose and to our gifts and what we should be doing with our life. And if we don't know, there's plenty of shelters that need volunteers. There's plenty of organizations that need volunteers. And I think we can actually all do really good in this world. We can add goodness, but we can get very familiar and very used to not being good. I think we can train ourselves just to be in our physical life and just going through the motions and pushing down all of these callings and feelings. And yeah, it is so
You know,
complicated, all of
you
it.
know, like what you're saying is so true. Like there's so much we can do. And everybody has angels. Like everybody has at least four angels. Like, and they're literally right here. It's not like they have to call on the angel and hope they can see the angel. Like the
Yeah.
angels are right here. And you know how like you have this best friend that you haven't spoken to in like 10 years. The second you pick up the phone, it's as if nothing has
Yep.
happened. You just pick
I
up where
love
you left
those.
off.
Uh-huh.
And that's how our conversations with angels are. The most important thing if you want to communicate with your angels is to decalcify your pineal gland, because our pineal gland is in our head. It's like literally, if you put your finger on your forehead, finger on the top of your head, where your fingers meet, you have a gland called the pineal gland. And that pineal gland is your antenna to the universe. It's a literal antenna. But we do live in a world where a lot of people have gone to the dark side, I want to say. So they've kind of like tampered with the way we live. So having a lot of like calcified food, having a lot of like fluoride in our toothpaste, having a lot of like, genetically modified fruits and vegetables, that's going to all shut down the pineal gland. So what you want to do, it's really easy to talk to angels. It's not for the special people. It's not for
Mm,
like that
mm,
one next special everyone can do this. And you just need to decalcify your pineal gland, because then your psychic center is open. Your pineal gland is like the master cell of all your psychicness. Once that it's and it doesn't take long to open it. I can give you the exact steps right now, and then once you open it, you're going to see the energy. You're going to feel the presence of angels, and they're going to communicate with you, and they communicate in so many ways, and you will know without a shadow of a doubt in every single cell of your body, this is a divine message, this is a divine intervention.
mm, mm. Yeah, you make it sound really easy. And like I said, life is complicated. It's also so simple. I think we complicate things a
We
lot.
do
But yeah,
complicate things.
opening up that gland, it's just listening to what our body wants. Does my body really want to consume that? That goes for what we watch, what we eat, what we do with our energy, our time, how we fill our moments. Just tapping in, is this what my true self wants? And for me, that's the start of actually tapping into so much more spiritually. And
Absolutely. I would take it a step further,
yeah,
because sometimes, like, and this happened to me, like if somebody has a lot of like negative bad bacteria in their gut, they
mm,
would think that their body really wants that chocolate, or that body really wants. I would say, like, ask yourself, what is the most loving thing I can give
yeah,
myself?
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And it's not
Like,
always easy. If we've got patterns and we're used to certain things, it can be actually quite hard to break that. But if we can truly listen to what our body wants, goes a long way, makes a massive difference.
I mean, I feel it depends on what our objectives are, right? Like if somebody has big dreams and they have big ambition, then they want to align their behavior to that, because it's the easiest thing in the world is to come up with excuses like, oh, this is hard, oh, this is difficult, oh, this
Mm,
is challenging, or like that's what the ego wants. Like life is a game. It is literally a game
mm,
between you and your higher self, and between you and God, full stop. Everything else is just a byproduct of that game. So it depends on, what people want. A lot of people think that they have to fix everything in their life before they take the time to invest in themselves. But
mm,
nothing will be fixed externally unless we take the time to bring ourselves into peace. And that's not hard. Like that's not hard at all. Like it might sound hard because a lot of people can look at their lives and be like, oh my God, there's so much I need to fix. But
Mm,
miracles happen every day. And they happen every day, and we don't even realize that they're miracles. Like if you take a little seed and give it to a blind person that's never seen anything, and told this blind person, all you need to do is put water and sunlight, and this is going to become a big orange tree that's going to give
mm,
you oranges for the rest of your life. It's hard to process in the mind.
mm.
But because we see it every single day, we don't even realize that it's a freaking miracle, right?
Yeah, yeah, we take so much for granted, right? We're just not even connected to the stuff around us. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we want to have the grandest experience in life, because both heaven on earth and hell on earth are possible, it just depends on our vibration. What are we vibrating? And our vibration comes from our emotional state and our alignment to God. So if somebody wants to have a great life, all they need to do is align themselves to God. God doesn't work with linear time and years of effort. God can work
Mm,
instantly, like instantly.
mm. I'm curious, you have had multiple experiences. You've had the big one when you're 14. Why do you think you've had multiple experiences?
When I think about it, I feel like my first experience of the big one when I was 14 was to teach me in a very, very, very quick way,
Mm,
um, that God is in charge. Everything is an illusion, and there is no such thing as nothing negative can exist. This is all the ego and what people like to suffer. People love to be victims. They don't like it in their minds. They don't choose it willingly, but with their emotional state, people are dying for someone to rescue them, for someone to come and save them. And when I died the first time, I realized all of that, none of that exists. This is all what we choose. Like if a person chooses to eat poison, they're going to have poison in their body. But if we choose health, we're going to have health in our body. So the choices we make matter with how we experience our life. So I think when I was 14, I had to have like a massive download that what is real and what is not real, because I started teaching people about spirituality at the age of 16. I did not have a normal teenage life
mm,
where I was dating guys and going to parties, and I didn't do that. I was so dedicated. Like I wanted to know more and more and more. I was so hungry because where I went was so beautiful. And I feel like the others that happened, they were more like just catalysts, like initiations, kind of like the ladder that we take in the snake and ladder game. Like they're just moving me up the ladder, because they weren't as intense, but they did give me a lot of beautiful downloads.
that's so cool. Have you wondered what your life would be like now if you hadn't had that initial experience at 14?
I can't imagine it, no, because it
No.
did happen. Like I can't imagine it, no. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you said earlier that you felt like that was a divine appointment, that that was going to happen regardless. That was your life plan.
Every moment in life is a divine appointment. Like even us speaking right now, it's a divine appointment. And I
Yeah.
feel that it's such a refreshing way to walk through life, knowing that everything is divinely orchestrated. So like for example, when I meet you, I don't look at you as Christy. I look at you as God's creation, and that makes me have so much more respect and appreciation for who you are. Because if we meet people, our minds can take over. We can assess them from the way they look or what they dress, or we're humans. But when we live in that state where everything is a divine appointment, there's a divine respect that goes along with it. And
Mm,
that changes the whole ball game of alignment.
mm, mm. There's so much that can change. In terms, you said that you're helping other near-death experiences to come to terms with what they've been through, to understand why they've had their experience and how to reintegrate back into this world. Are you happy to share a little bit about that and also about your academy?
Yeah, absolutely. Like people that have near death experiences can experience one of two things, or three things. I've like those are the main categories. The first one is they would experience something very blissful, where they meet God, or they meet their angels, and or Jesus, or one of their guides or their ancestors, get like a message, a download, and they come back to earth. The second one would be that they go somewhere dark, like they start seeing demons and they start seeing, like, scarier parts of energy. And and then they come back to earth. And then the third part is they get stuck in limbo. So like they go into a coma, or they get stuck somewhere for a couple of weeks, months, years, whatever it needs. So when people come to me and they've experienced that, if somebody's experienced the light part of the near death experience, what I do is I help them integrate all that knowledge, all that wisdom, and whatever past life they need to heal so that they can keep that energy as part of their everyday life. Because if we don't, we're going to dip. The second thing is if people experience the darker side of energy, so demons and entities and stuff,
Mm.
it means that within their lineage, there has been a lot of black magic. There has been a lot of like association with darkness. And we've all had that somewhere, somehow. So I help them clear that. So then their energetic field is more angelic and it's no longer dark. And, people, like, sometimes people contact me and they tell me, oh, that their cousin or their friend is in a coma or something like that happened. Then I'll work with their soul, because remember, everything is coming in from a soul level, not a
Mm.
human level.
Mm.
And, work on a soul level and see what's up. Like, why did they choose to go into a coma? And then help them heal from there. A lot of people end up waking up. So it really depends. It's case by case. It's not like a one size fit all.
Mm. Mm. That's it, because these experiences are so unique, aren't they? They're not the same. They're similar, but they're so individual. So, yeah, I really like that, because I get a lot of people messaging me and saying, oh, I've had this experience and I really just don't know what to do with it. And it can be quite hard, quite dark in those early times after this beautiful experience. And a lot of people talk about longing to go back to where they were. Is that something that you ever faced, of wanting to be back in that blissful state, in that beautiful place that you're in?
That is so true. Like, when people have near death experiences, they feel like they want to go back to where they were because it's such a high. Like, it's
Mm.
such an incredible, loving, magical emotion. But people can experience that on earth. Like, we don't
Mm.
need to die to experience that. Like, if we're alive, that means God wants us here for a reason. So people can experience that, and it goes back into aligning, our mind, body, and soul. So we're no longer living fragmented. When people live fragmented, they live in a way that's like a suffering paradigm. But when people live in their wholeness and completeness, then they can have that high. Like, basically, people want to feel God. God is in our hearts. God is not in the sky. So when we open up our hearts and we feel God, then you're having that in your everyday life, and then you're spreading that with everybody around you too.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. How do you feel about your physical death for this lifetime?
I think it's so important that everybody meets their death. There is a practice that I take a lot of people through where they travel in time and they go to their own graveyard, because fearing death, like, we should not be fearing death, because people that are afraid to die are people that are afraid to live. And if we don't live, we're missing out. We're missing out on our entire life,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
We'll make decisions based on, like, oh, is this going to hurt me? As opposed to, oh my God, is this going to bring me more joy? Is this going to elevate me to the next level? So I think it's very important everybody makes peace with the fact that we're going to die. And death shouldn't be negative. Like, I don't think we should have like funerals and, mourning phases for people that die. I think people that die are giving people the biggest gift they possibly can give, which is allowing them to grieve. So let's say somebody dies, the whole family is going to cry. And please understand, I'm not being heartless. I've had so many people close to
Yeah.
me die, like, so
Yeah.
many people. Like, my best friend died the day I gave birth. Like, that was so intense
Oh,
emotionally.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not being heartless by saying it so nonchalantly, but this is the truth, right?
Mm. Mm.
Like, like, when people die, they're leaving, because everything is a service. They're leaving those that they love with the biggest service, which is, I give you permission to feel. I give you permission to let out all the pain in your heart. That's why you'll see in funerals, the people that are furthest away from the person that died are crying the most, because they have the more, like, people will release what trauma they have in their hearts when somebody dies. I think we should respect people that die, and that respect that they went on their own journey, and give them that celebration and release them so they can actually go into that journey and not have a fragment of them back in this realm. Does
Oh,
that make sense?
that totally makes sense. And we see this so often, don't we? That as the living, we're afraid to let go of someone who's gone before us. I think a lot of, yeah, I love that you're talking about it's that space and the permission to grieve and release something, because I think that's so important. Personally, I think funerals are quite important, so quite the contrast. And I love that we can look at that quite differently. I think there's certainly a place for grief and for mourning. I think it's very
Yeah,
important to do. And I think funerals are probably for the people that are still living, not the person who's gone.
absolutely. Like when I said I don't think we should have funerals, I mean like we shouldn't have funerals with the intention we have them. Like it's a sad thing this person
Yeah,
died.
yeah,
But a
absolutely.
ceremony, like having a ceremony, call it a funeral, absolutely is needed
Yeah.
for our brains to process, our hearts to process, our bodies to process that transition.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So I agree with that. And I think grief is really important. But absolutely, I'm like, at my funeral, let's have some fun. Like, let's have cake, and I don't know if you can find some nice balloons that aren't going to hurt the environment. Let's have balloons, let's have colors and happy music. Let's have a laugh, because I don't know, I think there's a place for that. And I hope that that's not just, if it's disrespectful to anybody, it's not intentionally, but I do think there's a place for joy within funerals and happiness and celebration. And
Yeah. You
like I
know,
said
a lot of
before, none are
cultures
getting out
do
alive.
that. A lot
Yeah,
of cultures do that. Like I was in this temple in Bali, and I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know if it was a wedding, because everyone was wearing white and everyone was dancing and everyone was celebrating. I was like, "Oh, is this a wedding or a birthday?" I was trying to understand because it looked so beautiful.
yeah.
So
No,
I
it's a
asked, I'm
funeral.
like, yeah, that's how they had their funerals. They really like rejoice the fact that this person lived with them, and now and then
Yeah,
they release them. And it was
yeah.
so beautiful to witness.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. It's yeah, it's interesting to see how people have had spiritual experiences, not even just near-death experiences, but real impacting experiences. The way that we tend to look at death can be quite differently, and it is just a natural progression for me. I believe it's all okay. It's painful, but it's okay. So I love it. I feel like we have done a full loop. We've talked about so many different things. I'm really challenged by there's goodness in all of us. Not challenged, I think the thing that I've brought out of this conversation, there is so much goodness in all of us if we just allow that to grow, to be utilized. That we've all got our own things. We shouldn't necessarily be running away from things, lessons that are going to teach us things. It's okay to live. We're possibly living many, many lifetimes. And you've given me a lot to think about that, because, yeah, things leaching through, energy coming through from different lifetimes. I haven't thought a lot about that. I'm going to do that from now. So I feel like you have just given us such a big gift. I feel like this has been a beautiful conversation with a lot in it. You may want to go back and re-listen to a few things just to make sure we get everything out of this conversation. But Neda, Harb, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed being here, and I love the back and forth. And the questions you were asking have so much depth, which I feel is so beneficial for people listening and what they can get out of it. So thank you for having me, and for giving me like this beautiful platform to share my story as well.
Yeah, it is a beautiful, beautiful story. I think there's so much we can take away from it. Neda, thank you.